Hello there, and welcome to Wildcard Decks, a channel where I like to highlight some of the more off-meta options and highlight individual cards that are perhaps not seen a whole lot of use, or not a lot of use in the context of the deck that we're looking at, or leader that we're looking at. So today I have Asajj of a different flavour. So I've already posted an Asajj video which was focused around Separatist aggro. This is, as you can see from the title, it's Imperial Triple Dark Raid. I had to look at Tarkin, and Triple Dark Raid yellow with him is quite popular, but I think that Asajj does it better, unfortunately, for him, which is, pretty bad for an Imperial. But going into double yellow gives her access to all the double yellow cards with no extra cost, of course, so it does help to disrupt along the way whilst we use Triple Dark Ray to push in the damage. So that is the general idea of this deck, but let's get into it. So in terms of the unit split, there's 19 on the ground and 13 in space. The ground units in general are not what you're looking to push for damage on, they are more mainly for disruption or other effects. Now, on reflection, after playing with it a bit, I think we probably do need a few more units. So I would probably swap maybe even the upgrades that I put in for some more units, whether that be in space or the ground. I'm probably more tempted to go into space because of Triple Dark Raid, but we'll get into it. Resource cost, so we do spike at 3 resource cost. That is because of all the space units that we're playing primarily, but we do have some other plays after that as well. And then in terms of rarity, all of the special, so-called special ones, they were in a starter deck, but they were also commons in one of the other sets, so it's not entirely reflective there. Even in spite of that, I think this is probably the least commons I've ever put into a deck that I've posted. So, yeah. On to Asajj herself. So I will be repeating myself a bit from the last video that I did on her, but her non-deploy action is attack with a unit, and if you played an event this phase, it gets +1 for this attack. So this is one of the things that I think makes her better for Triple Dark Raid Imperials than Tarkin, because you can play Triple Dark Raid, it's an event, whatever vehicle you play out, you can then attack for 1 more power than you otherwise would be able to. So, yeah, that's one thing that I think she has in her favor above Tarkin. When she deploys on 4, so she's early, which helps with the aggro as well. Another thing she has over Tarkin. She has a base 3 attack, but because we've got Petranaki Arena, she actually hits for 4, and then if you have played an event this phase, she gets another attack, so she'll be hitting for 5, and she gets shoot first. So if your 5 damage from Asajj would defeat the defender, then the defender, well, yeah, is defeated and Asajj takes no damage back, which is good because she dies to a stiff breeze, basically. She dies to open fire, force choke, any other kind of removal apart from Velvet Dragon, of course, and Vanquish. But yeah, she's incredibly flimsy. But yeah, typically there's a lot of Sentinels that cost 3, so you may be looking to play an event on her deploy turn and then deploy her, take out the Sentinel, and then your if you do have any other ground units in at the time, they can then attack into base. But if you've got Surprise Strike, she then hits for 8. If you've got Cunning, which we do have in the deck, then she hits for 9. So yeah, she can seem relatively unassuming on the base stats, but you can quite quickly pump her up. So onto the ground units that aren't vehicles first. So we've got Bib Fortuna, just for 2 of them. He comes in shielded, which helps him stick around. His attack stats aren't worth talking about, but his main utility is that you can play an event from your hand and it costs 1 less. So when you think about Triple Dark Raid, it costs 3, and then the vehicle you play costs 5 less. So that essentially means you can play a vehicle for 2 resources less than you otherwise would be able to. with Bib Fortuna, if you play Triple Dark Raid for 1 cheaper, then you can play the vehicle for 3 resources less than you otherwise would be able to. So there is a potential here for Bib Fortuna Phase 1, use your action, play Triple Dark Raid for 2 resources. You've then got the ATSD, let's say that costs 5 less, that's 1 resource. You've paid 2 for Triple Dark Raid, you still have 1 resource left. You can then play the ATSD on Phase 2, which is going to be quite significant. If they play a Sentinel on Phase 2, which is entirely plausible, then the ATSD has Overwhelm, so you'll still be able to do damage onto base whilst also getting rid of their Sentinel. So that is a potentially quite powerful play. Not always really going to be able to pull it off, but it's certainly a possibility. Snowtrooper Lieutenant, we've got 3 of those because we have gone quite heavy on Imperials, so this is going to be a relatively frequent turn 1 play just because it's 2 resources, but when played you can attack with a unit, and if it's an Imperial unit it gets +2 for this attack, so a lot of our Imperial units are in space, so in the later game you might have a Lurking TIE Phantom out, play the Snowtrooper Lieutenant, your TIE Phantom will now be able to hit for 6 straight away. So that is the pretty much the main reason we got the Lieutenant in. Viper Pro Droid got the 1 of those, again because it's Imperial, but you can look at the opponent's hand. So I think most people would probably prefer Bazine, but I've gone with the Imperial theme because Bazine can also provide some disruption, but Viper Pro Droid can help you to know if there's anything in there that you might want to then get rid of with Bodhi Rook. Speaking of, our first double yellow card in the deck, we've got Bodhi Rook, so he's Imperial, he's a Rebel as well, because he's a traitor, obviously. But he is still Imperial in the game, and when played, look at an opponent's hand, discard a non-unit card from it. So any event or upgrade you will be able to get rid of. So obviously this is very good against control, and we do have another card that I'll get onto later on that will amplify Bodhi's effect even further. 3/3 stats, nothing to write home about, but as I say, his main purpose in this deck is just to disrupt the opponent. So, Cellblock Guard, we don't have access to many Sentinels in Double Cunning. This is the Forgotten Sentinel because it's pretty much been replaced by Phase 3 Dark Trooper, but it's just a solid Sentinel to put down to provide a bit of protection, mainly for Asajj, in preparation for her deploy. I've gone with General Veers. Now, initially I did go all in on having 3 of him, but he's quite easy to kill, and whilst the +1/+1 is nice, especially for your TIE Phantoms, because it will take them out of perilous position, killing them, it's just, yeah, I was not finding him to be impactful enough straight away. So yeah, I've gone down to just a 1 of him. He's a nice bonus if you can get it to work. For 5, we've got Cantina Bouncer. So when played, you may return a non-leader unit to its owner's hand. So this is basically Waylay in unit form. So for only 2 more, you get a 3/5, which is okay stats, not great for 5 resources, but the when played effect is particularly useful. So if there's a Sentinel in space that's blocking your Space Force, then you can play the Cantina Bouncer, and even though he guards a lowly Cantina, he can bounce any space unit. So yeah, that's kind of the main use. Or if they have buffed a unit with upgrades, experience, that kind of thing, then you can Cantina Bouncer it back to their hand. If they've played a Sentinel that phase and they wouldn't be able to replay it, then Cantina Bouncer will be able to get that back to their hand, clearing the way. So yeah, another thing that you can do, it doesn't say it has to be an enemy unit, so if one of your units has been, I don't know, bountied or entrenched, that kind of thing, any kind of debilitating effects, perilous position, or all that kind of thing, then you could bounce your own unit back to your hand to get rid of those debilitating upgrades. So onto the core of the deck, I would say. Triple Dark Raid package. So for those who don't know, Triple Dark Raid, keep your eye on this card because in set 4 it's going to go nuts, I would imagine. But basically, search the top 7 cards you deck for a vehicle and play it. It costs 5 less. It's a bit hard to tell on there, but it is 5. And enters play ready. So this is what helps you push in the damage and is particularly good against control, because anything that you can play and attack in the same phase is always going to be very effective. And then it returns to your hand at the end of the phase. So it helps you push in damage, but we also have things like the tie advanced, which means you could be getting its 2 experience tokens effect twice if you decide to play it again the next phase. There is also potential with this with another card, which I'll get onto later. So all of the vehicles we've got, so TIE Fighter, 3 of those is a 1 cost. It's not terribly exciting, but it is a vehicle, so we've got it in. It is the only 1 cost play we've got in the deck, so it's unlikely you will be playing 2 in the first phase. So if you've got Snow Trooper Lieutenant and this in hand, then the better play is to play the TIE Fighter, and then the next phase potentially do the Snow Trooper Lieutenant, so you can hit in for 4 straight away. TIE Phantom, it's going to be a standard in yellow villainy decks. It can't die to anything other than shrinking and combat damage. So it can't be takedown, it can't be Felver Dragoned, etc. All that kind of thing. So its base power is to hit for 4. And remember, with Triple Dark Raid, because of Asajj's non-deploy ability, all of these vehicles can have +1 power. So if you Triple Dark Raid out of TIE Phantom, then it can hit for 5, which is, nothing to be sniffed at. 7th Fleet Defender, again, just another option in space, but it can sometimes be a better option than the TIE Phantom. So if they've put out a Sentinel in space and you Triple Dark Raid, it can be better to pull the Defender because it comes in shielded. It might be able to kill the Sentinel, survive, goes back to your hand, and then you can play it again either next phase or whenever you want. TIE Advanced kind of already covered, but any Imperial units that we've got, it can give 2 experience tokens to it. So TIE Phantom is going to be the primary target you're trying to do it on because it will take it out of perilous position range, and as I already said, it can't be targeted by removal. On the ground, we do have, Snow Trooper Lieutenant's not going to be a great one to target, but we've got Viper Pro Droid, Bodhi Rook, General Veers. If you pull that off, that will help him stick around and continue to give buffs to all your other Imperial units. What Guard, making it a 5/5 could be quite tasty, but yeah, your space units are going to be the ones that you mainly target for this. ATST, so I feel like this is a bit of a forgotten vehicle as well, but considering it's only single aspect, it is statted very well. 6, 7, you'd probably prefer it the other way around, but having 6 attack with Overwhelm, with Triple Dark Raid, as I mentioned earlier, if they've got a Sentinel out with not a whole lot of health in the early game, then you're going to be able to trample over it and do some damage to base still. So, yeah, a very important card in this deck. And then I've gone for the one of Chimera. I would probably debate swapping this out for a cheaper one, but as I say, I went all in on the Imperial angle. So this costs 8, so the earliest you'll be able to do this with Triple Dark Raid is when you've got 6 resources, which can be when we start to fizzle out with this deck as well. So that is another reason why I kind of put this in, because it just gives us a little more, well, I say a little more, a lot more of a push, because if Asajj is probably dead by this point, so you will you'll be able to actually hit for 9 because of her non-deployability. So it's an 8/7 shielded, so there is that Arquiton's ship that can ambush, and I think it has 7 power. So in the unlikely event they are playing that, the Chimera will survive because of its shield. And then it does have an on attack. This ship was designed for the Thrawn Set 1 leader, but on attack, name a card, an opponent then reveals their hand and discards a card with that name from it. So this is going to be more plausible in the second game, perhaps, of the 3. But if you have Viper Pro Droid or Bodhi Rooked at some point beforehand, but also you'll see what they're playing throughout the game anyway. You are naming blind for the most part, and you might get lucky and hit something that they've got. Generally, I would probably just name, okay, what is going to be a potential thing that can shut the Chimera down from attacking. So perilous position, fell the dragon, all that kind of thing is probably what I would name, even if I don't think they do have it in hand. But or super laser blast, that kind of thing. So the wild card today. So the wild card is something that I like to highlight that I don't think gets much use. Now, because it's a double yellow card, that is kind of going to be bit by default anyway, but I don't really see much of this around, even though I think it does have a lot of utility. So what does it do? It probably sounds a bit counterintuitive as well, but return a non-leader unit that costs 6 or less to its owner's hand. Then its owner may play it for free. So the main reason this is in the deck is because we have quite a few units that have a when played effect. So we are essentially being able to recycle that. So if we recap the ones that we've got the Snowtrooper Lieutenant, when played, attack with another unit, and if it's Imperial, which it probably is, it'll get +2. So if you're blocked in the ground with Sentinels, but you're not blocked in space, or vice versa, whichever way it is, then you can play New Adventure, replay this basically, get the when played, attack with a TIE Phantom, get an extra 2 damage in than you otherwise would have been able to. We have a Viper Pro Droid, there's only one of them in the deck, but if you want to refresh and have another look at your opponent's hand, perhaps they've just left this line around and it's been a few phases, then you can have another look. We've got Bodhi Rook. This is one of the main targets that you would be looking at, depending on the matchup. If you're against an aggro deck, then they're probably less likely to have as many non-unit cards in their hand at any one time. But New Adventure Bodhi Rook, you can then discard another card from their hand. Very good against control. TIE Advanced. So New Adventure with TIE Advanced, you can then get in one phase, potentially, if you've got enough resources, get another 2 experience tokens. So you could be buffing your TIE Phantom for 4 experience tokens in one phase, maybe. More likely that you'll have played it out one phase and then you adventure it the next phase, buff your TIE Phantom, any other Imperial unit again. And then we have Cantina Bouncer. So being able to recycle its bouncing effect can mean your opponent is wasting a lot of resources. So let's be generous and say that you've bounced a 5 resource play back to their hand. They then replay it in the next phase, maybe. You can new adventure your own card, Cantina Bouncer, for just 2 resources, and you've cancelled out 5 of their resources, or even 6 maybe, straight away, because they decided, well, I'm going to go on curve and hit a 6 resource play. So yeah, I think a new adventure, it has a lot of utility and use in this deck. Another thing that you can do is if you've been hit with any debilitating effects, such as perilous position, etc., then you can play this on one of your own units. It will remove all the upgrades, so the debilitating upgrades will disappear. So similar to Cantina Bouncer, you can do it to yourself and use it for that. Similarly, you could use it on an opponent's unit if they've buffed it with a lot of upgrades. Then those upgrades will disappear. They will be healed, so it will remove all the damage as well. So it's something to consider. But yeah, I think it's got a lot of utility, and we've gone for the full 3 to go all in on the recycling effects aspect. One thing I nearly forgot actually is with Triple Dark Raid, this will be when you've got higher resources, so at least 5. But what you can do with Triple Dark Raid, let's say you get out a Lurking TIE Phantom, you've got 5 resources overall, you then attack with a TIE Phantom. Now, normally, the TIE Phantom would then return to your hand at the end of the phase, but if you decide to play a new adventure on the TIE Phantom, then the Triple Dark Raid effect is no longer valid because it comes in essentially as a new unit, so it's no longer bound by Triple Dark Raid. So then when the phase ends, it will remain in play. So that is another potential use of this. It's probably not one that you will really be looking for, but it is a potential. On to the rest of the events. So I've gone for all 3 of No Good to Me Dead. I think depending on what you're up against, Waylay may be a better option. especially if you're finding you're going up against a lot of Sentinels. But No Good to Me Dead I probably primarily got for if there's a leader that deploys, because most leaders can be more powerful than Asajj, or if there's a threat that will take Asajj out on the ground, or that will take out the Tarkin TIE Phantom in space, etc. That's kind of the main reason I've got that in the deck. Unnatural Life, I've highlighted this card previously in, I think it was my Kylo Ren Separatist aggro deck. This is very good against control as well, because if your unit has died and you've got enough resources, you can replay it. It will come in ready, and then it will die again at the end of the phase. But if your opponent has killed one of your units, they have either spent resources to do it, used a unit to do it, so then it's not going to be able to attack again, which will mean if you use Unnatural Life, it will be possibly safe for it to come back and then attack into base anyway. So that is the main reason I've got it in here. So it costs 3. The unit you play costs 2 less, so you will have to pay 1 more resource than the unit costs. But if you think about it, you play Lurking TIE Phantom on 3 resources. The next phase you have 4 resources, you hit with a TIE Phantom, perhaps they kill it, or they've killed it straight away. You will then have 4 resources that you can use to bring the TIE Phantom back completely. So it might sound a bit naff, but I would strongly argue that it's not. Cunning. So this is the legendary. I did have one naturally from a booster pack a long time ago, and then I decided I would buy the other 2. I think on average the other 2 cost me about 14 quid each, which, I mean, for a card it's a lot of money objectively, but in game terms it's relatively good price. But anyway, so it's another double yellow. So choose 2 in any order. So sequencing can be relevant sometimes, but one thing to always remember about its bouncing ability is that the unit you pick has to have 4 or less power. So it is not a universal bounce like the Cantina Bouncer. So the most common ones that you're going to be using are the top 3. Give a unit +4 for this phase. This is when Asajj can hit for 9, which is always very nice. Or you can put it on your Lurking TIE Phantom because it's less likely to be able to be dealt with. You can exhaust up to 2 units. The 4 less power bouncing effect is going to be mainly for Sentinels. And then the final one, which probably sees the least amount of use, is an opponent discards a random card from their hand. So if you're against control, this can be a good option. Or if you've Viper Probe Droid or Bodhi Rooked and you've had a look at their hand and think, okay, there's another one that I would like to get rid of in there, and this will give you a chance of doing that. The other thing, when I mentioned about sequencing, if you are going to bounce a unit to their hand and discard a card, then if you're not too fussed about them playing that unit again, you will want them to discard a random card as the first effect, and then bounce the unit to their hand, because it does say in any order, so it will take effect one after the other. So yeah, just something to consider. Hotshot Blaster is the only upgrade that we're running, and mainly to give us a larger hand, in effect. I would consider perhaps not having this in at all, because we're not necessarily looking to do a load of attacking on the ground, but as I say, it just helps to expand your hand a bit. So yeah, anyway, it's not valid for non-vehicles. I think that's another reason why you perhaps would not want it in this deck, because we don't have a ton of ground units. But when played using Smuggle Attack with attached unit, it gives it +2 and just hitting straight away. So it's kind of like a breaking in basically, but without the Saboteur. In terms of other options, so there is obviously Unnatural, who is probably a better bet than the Viper Probe Droid. I've only got 1 of Bazine anyway, so if you've got 3 of her, then you'd probably go with her instead, because you can look at their hands, which gives you some knowledge, but then they have to, well, you don't have to, you can choose them to disrupt, to discard one of their cards, which will cause some disruption. And she does have a smuggle one as well on 4 resources, which is quite expensive, but we don't actually have any 4 resource plays in this deck. No, it's a lie. We've got TIE Advance, but I think that's it otherwise. Oh, and Cunning, of course, literally just spoke about it. And then we got Breaking In and Surprise Strike, so I haven't got either of those in the deck. You can make a very good case for either. I think if you're going in with sideboards, you'd always have a full set of one of these three, I'd probably err on the side of breaking in because of Sentinels. Frozen in Carbonite, it's not an event, but it's an upgrade that will permanently exhaust the enemy units, as long as it's a non-leader, um, until they remove it, of course. Now, I stumbled upon this with Slaver's Freighter. Slaver's Freighter wouldn't be a terrible target for Triple Dark Raid because it costs 5, so you'll always be able to play it out. But its when played effect is interesting because you may ready another unit with power equal to or less than the number of upgrades on enemy units. So if you have put a Frozen in Carbonite on an enemy unit, and let's say they've got any kind of shield or experience, which is not, going to be unlikely, then if you've so they got a Frozen Carbonite, a shield, any other kind of thing, they got 2 upgrades on their side of the field. Lurking TIE Phantom has 2 power, so whilst it hits for 4, that's because of Raid 2. So you could potentially be Triple Dark Raiding this out. They've got 2 upgrades amongst their units, readying your TIE Phantom at the same time, and then you'll hit in for 8, and, well, you've already hit for 4 with TIE Phantom, hit for 4 with a Slaver's Freighter, and then hit for another 4 with TIE Phantom. So that's something that I would be interested in trying out. How reliable it would be is another question, probably not very, but there's certainly potential there, let's put it that way. And because Triple Dark Raid, if you Triple Dark Raid it anyway, it comes back to your hand, then you can play it again and ready up the TIE Phantom again. So yeah, it'll certainly be interesting. I think if I had included this, that may well have taken the wildcard slot. Waylay, I think this would be interchangeable with No Good to Me Dead in terms of an event slot. If you're going up against a lot of Sentinels, then this will help mitigate that. Geonosis Patrol Fighter. This could also be a slot instead of No Good to Me Dead because it will serve the same purpose as Waylay in effect. It's a 5 cost, so we're not interested about the exploit, but it's a 5 cost, so with Triple Dark Raid you'll always be able to play it. But when played, you may return a non-leader unit that costs 3 or less to its owner's hand. So again, a lot of Sentinels cost 3. You can bounce it to their owner's hand straight away, still attack in. Its stats are rubbish for, a 5 cost, but that's because it's got exploit. But for when played, that could be quite powerful, I think. So Slaver's Freighter I've already covered. Bounty Hunter Crew, this would help you recycle your events. So the main event you would be looking to recycle would be Triple Dark Raid. So it's 6 cost, 4/4 stats are atrocious. You may not want to ambush, because if you've got a new adventure, then you can play this out, pray it survives, and then you've returned an event to your hand already. You can new adventure it the next phase, or if you're somehow on 8 resources and still haven't won, then or lost, then you can new adventure it again, get another event back. So you got, again, it's the recycling effects that we're going for. Xanadu Blood. This is probably the space unit I would consider swapping the Chimera out for because it's cheaper. So you'll be able to get it out more reliably from Triple Dark Raid or just playing it normally. And it's got Raid 2, so it actually hits for 6, which is quite important because its stats 4/6 makes it immune to Takedown and Fell the Dragon. The when played on attack isn't really going to take effect because I think the only underworld unit we've got is Bib Fortuna in the main deck anyway. So yeah, I'm not going to cover that, but that is what I'm tempted to swap out the Chimera for. And then the Invisible Hand, a bit of a odd choice, I think, but this would also fit in the Chimera slot. Again, with Xanadu Blood, it has the same benefit of being immune to Takedown and Fell the Dragon, but interestingly, when played, create 4 Battle Droid tokens. So if you do Triple Dark Raid it, the Invisible Hand will go back to your hand, but the Battle Droid tokens won't. So you can then play it again at a later point and get another 4 Battle Droid tokens. The downside of it, of course, is that it does only have 4 power, which for an 8 resource play with Triple Dark Raid is, well, it's the equivalent of a Lurking TIE Phantom. So yeah, it's not it's not great in that aspect, but it was something that kind of crossed my mind. Now, whether I will always do this, I don't know, but with spoiler season, so to speak, in effect for set 4, I've done a little bit of peeking ahead to see what could be very good in this deck going forwards. So Independent Smuggler is absolutely one because its piloting cost is only 1, but the attached unit gains raid 1 and +1/+1. So if you look at the Lurking TIE Phantom, the +1/+1 will take it out of perilous position range, which is quite crucial, but it will gain 2 attack as well. So it will have a base power of 3, but it will have raid 3, so it'll actually be hitting for 6. So yeah, Independent Smuggler I see as being a very viable play in this deck going forwards. Vet's Fire Spray, so it's only a 4 cost, so again, Triple Dark Raid you'll always be able to play, and Triple Dark Raid is where this unit will shine with Asajj in particular, because of its when played and on attack ability. So, well, I say in particular with Asajj, I mean it'll be very good with Boba Fett as well, leader. But anyway, with Asajj, because of her non-deploy ability, potentially if she's not deployed when you play this, then it can hit for 5. But when played, you deal 1 indirect damage to a player, so it goes to their unit or base as they choose, and then also on attack. So with Triple Dark Raid, you're going to get this, well, unless they deal with it straight away, you'll get this ability twice. So you attack for 5, potentially with Asajj's ability. You've got another 2 damage to spread around, that's 7 damage that you're doing. So yeah, this is going to be a very good unit to include as well. And then the Quasar TIE Carrier is a 6 resource play with 5 attack, which is pretty decent, but on attack, again, with Triple Dark Raid, creates TIE Fighter token, so similar to what I was saying with the Invisible Hand. Whilst this will return to your hand, the TIE Fighter token will not. Now, I mean, TIE Fighter token's only a 1/1, but still, it gives you another body in space that will attack, and helps to protect against things like Power of the Dark Side, because you can just choose your TIE Fighter token instead. Whilst I'm on the subject of Power of the Dark Side, Lurking TIE Phantom nullifies that because it's your choice what is defeated. TIE Phantom is immune to those effects, so you can choose the effect to take place on TIE Phantom, and then nothing will happen. So yeah, just whilst I was on that topic. But yeah, at the time of recording, these are the ones that have been revealed thus far that I think have a place in this double yellow deck. So yeah, let me know what you think. As I say, I think this is, unfortunately for Tarkin, a better option than him. I mean, the advantages that Tarkin has over this is the fact that you can have commands, so you can resupply, etc., all that good stuff, and that you can use his ability to keep buffing the TIE Phantom to ad infinitum. But and the fact that he's leader as a leader with 7 health, he doesn't die to a stiff breeze like Asajj does. But as I say, I think Asajj does this general idea of a Triple Dark Raid Imperial deck better than Tarkin. You could probably look at it in Asajj Red as well, because then you'll have Ruthless Raider. So yeah, I think she has this particular deck type cornered, really, in my opinion. But let me know what you think. Maybe Tarkin is the way to go, but I personally don't see it. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.